Hi, I'm Miranda Roldan, and I'm an actor, model, comedian, producer, writer extraordinaire, and also host of the Balancing Actor podcast. You can follow me at Miranda Roldan TV on Instagram, and you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries, of course. I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a multi-talented individual. She is a podcast host. She is a brand new mother, so congratulations to her on that. She is also a very talented actor in, of course, New York and Hollywood, and I'm sure you've seen her on Blacklist and a ton of other things that I'll let her describe because then I'd be taking up her time. We're joined today by Miranda Roldan. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Good. This is why I edit, so I can make it sound like I actually hit that in the first take. It's
All
beautiful.
good. Yeah. It's going to sound seamless in the
Oh,
end.
oh yeah, the heads will be jumping all over the place. It'll be great. For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
Fantastic. So I love that as a creative person because usually creative people don't have just one title, right? So I'm an actor primarily. I've also done some modeling in the past. I've had tried my hand at stand-up comedy. And right now I just finished actually a new script, a feature film, a comedy called Shit Crazy. So I'm dipping my toes in the writing world. And then I have another rom-com, faith-based rom-com that I am beginning to write as well, name TBD. And I'm also a new mom and a podcast host. So I love to do what you do. So you do a little bit of everything. I definitely associate myself with that multi-hyphenate title.
The problem with creativity is we have so many avenues and so many facets, yet we only have a limited amount of time in life to accomplish everything.
Oh yeah, I feel that more than ever now, being a new mom.
The world of acting and the world of podcasting are kind of similar, and I'm sure the world of being a mother is very similar. It's very fast paced, it's very in depth. You have to be researching constantly, you have to be always on top of your game in some way, shape, or form. But what is the most misunderstood aspect about being an actor, a podcast host, and a mother that people who aren't aware of those industries and motherhood misunderstand?
Amazing. So I'll break it down to the three. So first is actor, right? So one of the most misunderstood things as being an actor is that people just automatically assume you have a lot of money. And that's not necessarily the case. um, that's the 1% to 2%, which is great. We all aspire to just be a steady working actor, I think. I think some people are after the fame. Me personally, I'm not. I just frankly want to make my health insurance every year. And I see that as a win. And then just having steady work, I think, is a huge win for myself as well. I've been in the game for over 10 years and I've learned a ton and learned that my medium really is TV, film, commercial world. I love theater too, but again, like you said, it's hard to juggle a lot and theater takes up a lot of your time. So I respect it. I love going to the theater. I'll even, if I get wild hair, I will do something that like really calls to me in the theater space. But for right now, my focus is TV film. Some years I do have a lot of money and other years I don't have a lot of money, like the past year where a lot of actors were on strike. So it's a humbling experience to say the least. The next is one of the most misunderstood things from being a podcast host. I think people automatically assuming they could just be on your show. Yeah, obviously, we listen to podcasts for a lot of different reasons, and it's really to just maybe get a laugh if it's more comedy. If it really, I turn to podcasts as a way to learn or a way to learn about the stories of how people got to point A to point B is really fascinating to me. So when people have asked to be on your show, like I see a lot of creatives myself, mainly actors who work side hustles or they have this kind of balancing game going on. Hence, it's called the Balancing Actor podcast. So, how you balance your creative life with your civilian one, and then everything in between. So, we really cover a lot of different aspects of what it's like being a working actor and bringing a more human perspective to it. Because a lot of people think it's all just glitz and glamour. And I'll tell you that most of the money that actors make is on like acne cream or some sort of pharmaceutical. So it's not as glamorous as you think. And then the third thing with being a mother and trying to balance like all these careers, one of the misunderstood things is that I would say the partnership you have with that other person, if you do have that other person in your life, that your spouse, significant other, whoever it may be, it takes work too. You're learning and you're growing. And I don't think a lot of people emphasize on how much teamwork really comes into play once baby is here. And I think everyone thinks it's all bliss and hearts and flowers and lily pads, and it's definitely not. But there's so many beautiful moments in between, and I feel like I am just not the same person now that I've become a mom, and it's for the better, and it's a love that you cannot describe. I don't know if you have children, Kurt, but it's truly unconditional, and that is what I've learned, and it's just expanded my heart and bring more depth to my creativity.
The fact that you have a great podcast, I've listened to a few episodes there. The fact that you dive into the behind the scenes of being an actor, and the fact that you're bringing, of course, your motherhood into some of your episodes as well. I think that's a great combination, because I'm sure there's many actors and actresses out there that are dealing with children, either brand new borns or, into the teenage years. I'm sure this is going to be a wonderful series overall as the podcast evolves and as your life evolves with your children. So the fact that you have these unique challenges coming forward and unique experiences, how is that going to help and maybe hinder your creativity as a person?
It's a great question. Okay. It was one of the reasons why I created the Balancing Actor podcast, actually, was to talk about what it was like to start a family. I was not finding a lot of content on Instagram, TikTok, even podcast hosts. People weren't talking about it. I'm like, obviously these, actors have families, but how are they doing this career? Because it is extremely time consuming. I was a bit nervous about it. So I wanted to also create a space of community for those that may be curious, maybe scared, and that's typically why a lot of actors delay the process, unfortunately. But I also completely respect the fact that they may want to put their acting career first. But I always believe that, and have always believed that, becoming a mother was just going to enrich my creativity. It was going to bring more depth to my craft as I showed up to each role, and give me access to something that I could think and try to create on my own without actually knowing what it's like, which is what we do all the time. But I just feel like I bring an extra special sense of authenticity, and it's been really special too, because I've worked on a few jobs bringing my son on board, and we've been able to do it together, and it's just been so wonderful working with him. It's like that's when it really feels like a treat, when I'm like, oh, I get to bring you and you get to do this with me, and we get to have a great time making these memories together. So I think it's only expanded my creativity. But there are times as far as hindering it. I mean, auditions take work. I had to do an audition. I had a callback today. It was a live Zoom. Thank goodness I didn't have to leave my home, but I still had to coordinate with my husband, like, hey, do you have the baby? And we even had the babysitter come for a few hours too, just so she could take the baby out and go for a walk so I can have complete silence, right? Because that's not a guarantee either. And you want to show up and be professional, but I always appreciate the directors and producers that like know that you're at home and you're doing your best. Okay. I think COVID
Yeah,
taught us a lot of patience
that's
with
true.
that. I think it's, you're tired. It's the evening right now as we're doing this podcast. And sometimes I have to wait until the evening until I can do my auditions. And it takes a lot of effort to do them. So it can hinder creativity. You kind of are like, let me just get this over with because I'm tired and I need to go to bed and whatever it needs to do, or this is my only time that I have. Naps are really precious for me. I like try to get as many auditions in as I can when there's napping, but you never know how long the nap's going to go. So in a way, it's like a game, but it can hinder your creativity if you really spend the time developing character and memorizing lines. I mean, as a new mom, I don't know if you're aware of this, but your brain actually changes after during pregnancy, but also after you have the baby. It's like your memory is very much affected, and your short-term memory, and that's bad for actors because
Yeah.
we really need our memory. So it's taught me that I need to continue to hone that tool that I have of memory, but it also is a little intimidating because I wasn't expecting my memory to be so difficult to access sometimes because of these new changes. And it goes away, but for now, it's been a little challenging.
It's so incredible the fact that you're able to juggle all of this, and the fact that you have a support system, and the fact that you're making it work. And that's the key factor. The fact that you're not giving up on what you're passionate about doing. And I think that's the most steadfast approach when it comes to being a professional and being a person, because at least you're moving forward with your life, and you're bringing wonderful people along with you on that journey. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And I would encourage any creative just to continue living your life, because you have a dream, but the dream doesn't necessarily chase you back, right? You're the one chasing the dream, but like anyone, you're going to lose maybe some stamina, endurance, whatever it is. And sometimes you need to, there's times where you need to sprint, and then there's times where you need to slow down. And I'm definitely in a season where, whether I like it or not, I've had to slow down. And I'm typically a very like sprinting type of personality, but I think that's the point, is having children. It lets you slow down, and it lets me really drink up the moments, and I'm very aware of not wanting to rush them, and knowing that this is the season I'm in, and it's just gonna allow me to just bring so much more to my craft. So just embrace it. Don't feel like I'm missing out necessarily. I don't feel that way at all.
Do you like being called an actor, actress? Like, I didn't know if if there's a preference to that.
So actor, I either or. It really doesn't matter. I typically introduce myself as actor. It's a little bit more universal. I know if it was like a magazine press or something like that, they usually say actress. I just always have felt like a diva saying actor. I don't know, maybe it's from my New York roots, but we all say actor. So
Okay.
it's, if you want to even address that, because I know I get that question a lot. They're like,
Okay.
why don't you say actor, actress? And I'm like, well, I don't care. I don't mind. You can call me actress, not wrong, but like I just think it's more universal. And
Is that a more universal approach to things these days, or is it more of a East Coast West Coast type situation?
I have no idea. I mean, everyone in my circle, I think, I don't even notice it really. So it's probably actor for the most part. Is just more universal. It's just an easier way to say it. I don't want to say it's cool to say it, but it's just that's the lingo we use. And the vocab is like, oh, he's an actor. Oh, she's an actor. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, see, I learned something new, and that's the
Go.
whole point of these types of shows. It's like
Yeah.
you look at industries that you're not really a part of, and you understand something brand new to it. And the fact that you are an actor and that you're successful and you've been on multiple shows. Let's dive into the history of yourself as an actor, because I'm curious about that. The fact that you said you're from New York. Are you in LA or?
I'm actually in Tampa, Florida, and in New York. So I flip-flop from north and south.
What's the main difference between a New York actor or an East Coast actor versus, say, a West Coast actor? Is there more opportunities on each side, or is it more of a you have to still fight for absolutely everything you get, and darn the people that are going after your role?
Oh, such a good question. Okay. Well, I'm biased, and I feel that what our East Coast actors definitely have more grit. Like I feel like they want it more, and therefore I'm more inclined to look at the New York actor, just because I know that they probably took 3 subway trains to get to this audition in the rain, snow, wind. Like, you got an audition, your butt's in that seat. And I always felt like West Coast actors have it a little bit easier, Oh, okay, you're stuck in traffic, what, in your AC car? Yeah, okay. And there's Hollywood's got this great reputation. Obviously, they're known for like the movie hub of the world, practically. I think that when you throw a stone, you have an actor, you can hit an actor. What's the expression? You swing a cat and you can hit an actor, one of those crazy
Something like
expressions.
that, yeah.
So there's a lot of oversaturation in the West Coast, where in New York, you don't know necessarily what you're getting. You could get a Broadway actor, you could get a dancer, you could get a TV film actor, you could get a bum on the subway, you could hit a family, a dentist, like whatever. Like it's such a mix. And I found that that's what I loved about New York. And I would love to check out LA and like really be there at some point, just so that I can say that I would have been there. But I'm just such an East Coaster through and through. So I don't really want to leave. I'm like perfectly happy and content on this coast at the moment, but we'll go out there if we need to. So I think the biggest difference is New York has a lot more variety. So if you want, and it's easier to get to places too. So if you wanted to go see a Broadway show, but then also go to an acting class, you can probably do that, or vice versa, and then go grab some pizza and meet with some friends and, go do something else. And where in LA, you pretty much need to pick like one thing that you're doing that day, just because everything's so spread out and far, and
Mhm.
that's about it. So, I'm sure it has its pluses. Obviously, they have great weather. If you really want TV opportunities, a lot of stuff is shot out of LA. However, I have to say, New York procedurals run strong. Law and Order SVU
Yeah.
running strong. I don't know, what are they on, like season 25 at this point?
Feels like
Um,
40 at this point. I
there
mean,
might be, because I think I was season 20, and that was in 2018. So it's just like wild. Like, it just, Dick Wolf, thank you for employing all of these actors. We really appreciate it. So like, I love my New York procedurals, but like Hotlanta is right around the corner. They've got all the Marvel movies that are coming through there. They have a lot of like really great series. Ozark was shot out of there. I mean, so watch out, LA, because it's not just LA anymore. And I'm excited because I think that we should be able to have these movie hubs and TV hubs in different places,
yeah.
because one, you get a lot of great talent and different talent. And two, it just goes to show that you don't need to all move to LA to
Or
be,
New York.
or New York to be
Yeah.
successful. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, being Canadian, the fact that Toronto is really the major hub for all television and film, whether you're from a U.S. production or Canadian production, it's pretty much Toronto is every single Hallmark movie ever made
Hmm.
when it comes to the holiday seasons there. So
I know. I'm waiting. I auditioned for a couple in Canada, and I'm waiting
nice.
to book one just yet. But that, we, who doesn't love a rom-com? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't love them, but those are also going very strong for many,
True.
many years. Thank you, Hallmark, for employing us actors. We appreciate you.
I looked it up. The rom com, specifically the Hallmark movie industry, is a $2 billion industry itself. Like it
Makes
is
a lot of sense.
crazy strong
I
these
wonder what
days.
percentage of that are Christmas movies, but that's just their Christmas themed.
It's over 80%. No,
Yeah.
it's literally
Okay.
over 80% because that's like
Believable.
Hallmark itself generated $2 billion just on Christmas movies alone.
Wow.
Wild. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Not surprised, but I gotta check off a Christmas themed one. The one I did down here that was shot in Tampa, or the Tampa Bay area, was South Beach Love,
Okay.
which ironically took place in Miami, but we shot it in Tampa Bay. That one was not Christmas themed, but it's on the list of, things to check off my career goals.
So let's look at your career goals here. Have you done stage, screen for TV and film? Like what is your favorite medium to work on? Is it stage, television, film? Have you done any indies? Like I'm curious about what really excites you when you look at a script.
The actor that's starting out is kind of taking whatever they can get because it is such an interesting and difficult road to even get on screen. I think one of the misconceptions too that you had asked about earlier is just how much work it takes to even get that 5 seconds of glory on camera. I've done everything. So I've done stage, I've done screen, I've done commercial is my bread and butter. I work a lot of commercial. I've done indie. What am I missing? Industrial. I've hosted TV shows and hosted for interviews and things like that. So I really love to try my hand at a lot of different things because I think it's a lot of fun and I think it's important to have a skill set in a lot of different areas. Just makes you more versatile. My preference though is TV film, and I think it will always will be TV film. However, nothing gives you more of a rush than being on stage and backstage when you are like ready to go for the first time. You're either terrified because the cast isn't ready, or you're just like ready to rock and roll. And you're working out the kinks, and it's just you're on your feet, you feel grounded. You're like, this is what true acting really is. It's in the moment. And I think it's beautiful. So for me, and I did what's considered an off-Broadway play. It was at the Theater Row in New York back in 2016 for a play called Phoenix Rising Girls and the Secrets They Keep. And it was drama through and through. And it was a very deep, deep play. And that was wonderful. And I'm just like so grateful for that experience because those castmates, they become your family. Like you're just so close. And that's what I also love about theater is you get super close to these castmates because you're in the thick of it day in and day out for many, many hours, where that's so opposite from TV film where you barely talk to your co-star. especially if they're famous, like you are not really talking to them all that much, depending on your role, because they're whisked away to go to their trailer, and for the next scene and things like that. So it's a very different sense of community with both mediums. I happen to like TV film because it's just a variety. I get to play, a newscaster in one thing, and then I get to be a crying maid who snitches and gets confronted by James Spader. I get to, I get to be like a tough detective lady. Like it changes all the time. And I think that for me, it's just really fun to play a lot of different things. So, which is why I like the TV film. I also like that it's lucrative, not gonna lie. Like I can make some good money with like 1 or 2 days of work. So that works really well with my mommy lifestyle now. The interviewing, like you said, I just really enjoy it. I love talking to people, from a human perspective, and getting the story behind how people got to where they are. I think it's really important to connect and to maintain that community. So I like to do a lot of different things, but my focus the last 10 years or so has really been TV film.
Blacklist, James Spader, just an iconic series. I got hooked on that like when it first got started, and the fact that it's on Netflix, I can finally watch the last few seasons of it because I missed out. It's just so incredible seeing these amazing actors that you get to work with and yourself on screen. The fact that it's like, I did that, I was there, I got, I remember the bloopers or the outtakes or something about that, particularly seeing that never made it. But obviously you're always learning in some way, shape, or form. How are you improving not only as an actor but as a person when you get onto a TV and film set? What do you take away from even just a supporting role?
I think every day you get to be on set, one, be grateful because it is a treat. The job is auditioning, actually getting on set and filming behind the camera, like that's the fun part. So I remember and I solidify to be grateful for every single opportunity, big or small. And for those positive actors out there, we never consider any job small, by the way. It's always a win in some capacity. I think every day that I get to be on set is also another day of acting school, if you will. Having been able to see James Spader work off camera was pretty incredible. And by the way, he's a very nice man, but he is Red Reddington through and through. Like that personality, that demeanor, like that's why that role has been so successful for him. And he really runs that ship or runs that show, drives the ship. Whatever the expression is, that series is his through and through. And he's got some really complex monologues. And just to see him like work through those and see his craft really come alive and also see the human side of him as well has just been pretty incredible as an actor from the other side. I sit right across from him. You can check the clip out. I'm on season 10, episode 7. And it was just pretty great to be able to work with him. And not only just him, I mean, I've gotten the chance to work alongside Kunal Nayyar, who is Raj from The Big Bang Theory,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you know him. So he such a sweetheart too, and just to see how he approached that was a very moody role for him in the storied life of AJ Fikry, very different than Raj from The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So I, showed up to set thinking I'm gonna meet Raj, and I met a very serious man at first, and that was his way of getting into his role or his character. And a little while later, I actually saw like the true Kunal, which you never kind of know with actors. Like, who am I getting? I've never met you before. I don't know. And it's a surprise, but such a sweetheart. Like everyone I've worked with, and Christina Hendricks too worked on that film, got to be backstage with her for an hour. Sweetheart, like super cool. We were in this lighthouse in Cape Cod, and it was just I was like, is this real life? This is amazing. Like this is exactly how I envisioned my life being. And look at it, it's happening now. So I just feel really lucky.
Little jealous, but I'm glad that you get to talk about these things on a show and the fact and your podcast as well, and that you have actors and actresses on the show itself. Everyone usually says, "What's the wisest piece of advice?" or "What's the most BS piece of advice that you've ever received?" But what is the second wisest piece of advice that you've received that has stuck with you in your career?
Okay, the second wisest piece of advice is never take anything personally when it comes to this career. Don't take it personally if you don't book something. There's 1,000 reasons why you didn't book it, and it's not because you were a crappy actor. It could be because you're too tall. It could be because you're not tall enough. It could be because you look too much like the lead. It could be you're prettier than the lead. It could be they went with a completely different race. Unfortunately, like it's just there's so many things. It could be because you're the whole role was cut in general. So it's not up to you to decide why you didn't get the role. Like the fact that you even got it is such a huge win that the alignment of the stars were on your side because so many decisions have to be made on the back end and a lot of it is just logistics, honestly. I definitely feel I didn't know this for sure, but I got a role once because I think I was second tier. Actually, I did know this. I was second tier because I had seen an email that was forwarded from my agent through like the lineage line. And I don't know if they meant to include that in, but like, it is what it is. It's business. I didn't take it personally. I was second tier. I was like, woohoo, first can't do it because they had a date conflict now. And now I get to do it. Awesome. That rolls for me, which also leads me to a piece of advice that ties into this one, who was given to me by an amazing actress named Christine Horn. She's just been such a fantastic mentor to me, and she's done a lot herself. And just, like there's this expression in Gen Z. I'm not Gen Z. I'm a millennial. Are you a girl's girl or are you a pick me girl? And that's from like this Love Is Blind reality TV show. That's for those listening, you're either rolling your eyes or you're like, yes, I definitely watched that with my spouse and I'm guilty of it. She's a girl's actor. Like she's going to give you the scoop and wants you to be successful genuinely. And she always said, if it's meant to be, it won't go past you. If the role is meant for you, it will not go past you. And I think that's given me a lot of freedom, emotional freedom, and holding on to like maybe a role that I really wanted and I didn't get, and I could either just beat myself up for it or realize it wasn't mine and we move on and there's something else that may open up. Some people who are more spiritual can also say give it to God, and like sometimes when I'm really nervous going into a callback or like a really big opportunity and I just want to do so well so badly, but at the end of the day I can just show up and do my best, but I got to give it up. If it's mine, it will not go past me. So that would be my second
It's
best
interesting.
advice. Yeah.
So then, what was an early experience where you learned that language had power?
So to support myself in New York City, being a New York City actor, could not support myself alone on the actor payment situation in the beginning. I'm also a dental hygienist, which is a fun fact. And I do that much less now, but I always like to throw that in there because that was really my survival job for many, many years. And I remember getting to New York City, freelancing as a dental hygienist, or they call it temping. And I would go into various offices. I worked on behalf of a temp agency, and I would go into various office, and this was my full-time gig. I would be in a new office every single week, unless I started making good relationships with these offices, and they'd always request me to call me back. And it was like a win-win because I didn't want to have to learn a whole new office all over again, although that's what I had to do every single day. So being an actor was really great because you had to really fake it sometimes with certain personalities. But I learned a lot, and I got to meet a lot of really cool people because, like I said before, like New York's very diverse. So I talked to some like pretty cool people, had celebrities as patients, like all that. And I remember this one time, it was really early on when I first moved there, and I worked for this very high-end dental office. And by the way, a lot of these dental offices think like they're the best dental office because they're in New York City. They think they're the best one, even though I would temp all the time and I'd see like I'd work in 5 and they all thought that they were the best. Okay, they weren't, but it is what it is. You can think what you want to think. And this dentist was just such a mean guy. He was just so mean and grumpy, and he just treated his staff so terribly. And I could see it because I was an outsider, but even the temp agency was like, oh, they love you. And I'm like, oh, they requested you again. I'm like, no, because I would always just do such a good job for them. No one could please this man, right? And even I couldn't please him. I had my run-in, which is where I'm getting to with the story with this guy. And I had to have some side conversations with his employees. And I was like, how do you guys deal with this day in and day out? Like it's borderline like abusive, like the way that he talks to you guys. There was a moment where he really got upset because there was just like a little droplet of water on the floor. Like I'm talking little. And his room had to be pristine.
Hmm.
And he publicly in front of the whole office and his patient that was sitting in the chair, like reamed me out for it. I was like frozen in embarrassment and shock. So I was sitting down and I said to myself, I'm not going to let him get away with that. Because if I let him get away with thinking he can talk to me like that and the way that he did it, it's always going to happen. And clearly nobody else has stood up for themselves here. And I don't really have anything to lose. So other than like, my agency maybe being upset with me, but they already know he's a pain. So like, I'm going to do this. But it took everything in my power as a people pleaser, right? A recovering people pleaser, to confront him at the end of the day and to tell him that that wasn't okay. And I didn't appreciate the way that he spoke to me. And I don't think that anybody on his payroll would expect to be happy about that conversation either. I was like internally gonna cry, but like he stopped and I thought he was gonna ream me out some more, but he was like, thank you for telling me that. And I'm sorry. And I was like, what? This man, I would never expect him to apologize. He's like, I'm sorry that that impacted you like that. That wasn't my intention. And I was like, well, then you must be blind because I don't understand how and deaf. Like, I don't understand what, but the fact that he said, I'm sorry, and that he acknowledged it reinforced the fact that my words standing up for myself has value, and I absolutely have to do that, even though it may make me feel super uncomfortable, but sometimes you just have to do that. And I hope that he may have had some more awareness the next time he tries to talk to his staff. Who knows? But I was really proud of myself in that moment. And ever since I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid to speak up.
And the world is a better place because of it.
I sure hope so.
Podcasting itself, everyone usually says, I want to make a podcast. That seems to be the common phrase where everyone that says, I have a podcast, you should be a guest, etc.
Mm.
It's difficult to filter who you want on your show depending on what your niche is. Usually it's the first 10 episodes that are the hardest when it comes to being a podcast host. If you can get past 10, you're golden. You can survive 15 years.
So I heard that it's really getting through those first 10, because what is it, like pod fade happens at like or 5 or 7 or something like that. Like pod fade meaning like you're doing this podcast, and then people are like, never mind, and then they stop doing it.
Now that technology has changed for the better, and the fact that you have access to video and audio and things like that, for the Balancing Actor podcast itself, how do you envision this show in a couple of years' time?
Yeah, I would love to see. I think the vision that I always had was establishing a really great community of actors that can come to my podcast and feel seen and heard or learn something new. I love to uplift actors who may not always get the attention, right? Like the working actor is not necessarily your celebrity actor. The working actor is the actor where you're like, "That person looks kind of familiar. Where have I seen them before? Oh yeah, you're on the tuna fish commercial." Like that's the working actor that I wanna talk to, because how did you get to where you are? What is your side hustle? What is your side gig? Because we know that you have one. Don't fool it unless you do have mommy and daddy's money. But I have yet to talk to somebody who has gone down that path or had that opportunity. I see me talking on a panelist of established podcasters that are in the actor creative space. I think that I'm leaning more towards health as an actor, like the healthy actor, if you will. I talk a lot about my pregnancy and maternity stuff, postpartum. I think it's super important to bring people in to what it's like in this world and this life, so that I can inspire them to have their own family, but also to know what to expect. I'm a huge advocate for advocating for yourself when it comes to the health department, because having been in healthcare, again, I was a dental hygienist, I see a lot of the back end of things, and I know when to call BS, and I know when to call that a medical facility is out there for profit and not necessarily out for the well-being of a person, versus like, do you have options, and what are those options, and what can we explore? So I know that when I realized that you really need to advocate for yourself, I want to spread that message. So I would love to be more in that space, being more of a expert, if you will, or just a person that people come to for advice, invited to panels, invited to, I don't know, parties or whatever it is. Like, I just want to be a positive presence in someone's life when they're listening, whether they're at the beginning of their acting journey or at the end of it or somewhere in between.
So when's the workshop?
I should have a workshop, right? I should be
Yeah.
building up to that. I've tossed around the idea, and I feel like I'm kind of working through my own, like I'm learning a lot right now, and it's going to be preparing me for something. And what that is exactly, I'm not sure, but I would love to have some sort of workshop or ability for people to come together and do it. So maybe we set it out as a 5-year goal once we keep building the community, and then have something either in person or online or whatever it is. Yeah, my eyes have been really open to a lot of things I've experienced in the last 5 years myself. So I'd love to share that with others.
Maybe a book deal first, and then
Sounds good.
seminar, kind of like
Yes.
combo with.
Book deal. Love that. Love that for me.
As your children grow up, you're slowly writing an omnibus when it comes to mental health and being a working actor in the various decades ahead.
Totally. And I think also as a creative, you can't help but think about what mark you're going to leave on the world. Think about all the other artists that they didn't become famous until they were dead, unfortunately. So, like, what are you leaving behind to, one, have your family and your children and your legacy to remember you, next of kin and all of that. And then also the world. What are you leaving behind the world to see? And I think that's why I love watching older films. I love watching actors in their younger days. Like, oh my gosh, look at him, look how, and look at her, she looks fantastic still. And or it's just like so cool to see them in like a small role in the beginning, quotation mark small role, and then now where their career is. It's just fascinating. And like, what better time capsule to capture than on film and TV? I think that's also why I'm like really fascinated with it too, is that it lives there forever, exactly as you are in that moment that you're filming it. So it's really cool.
And then it'll get remastered into 4 and 8K, and then you'll see every single pore that ever happened on your
Yeah,
entire
and
body.
even more beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Even more beautiful. Give me the pores. Give me
Yeah.
them. They're a real human being.
I'm curious, these influences that you've watched on screen, what's a film or TV series, or both for that matter, that you've watched more than 5 times that maybe you have a favorite quote from?
Oh my gosh. Okay. My husband's gonna appreciate this one. So more than 5 times, I feel like it's such like a basic millennial answer, but Friends has been such a pivotal thing in my life. Ever since I started watching it, I actually was late in the game watching Friends. My husband has watched it a million times. That was like his friend group's show. I really got into it like later, like in my 20s, because we didn't have cable growing up, so I didn't watch it. And we didn't have a streaming service either. So like I just didn't watch it. And I was also like at dance and field hockey and theater and all the other things I was doing. So I didn't really miss much in my high school days of not watching the show, but I actually watched it in my 20s when my now husband was away. He was deployed. He's in the army. So he was deployed for a year. So I had to have something that I could do. And Friends was like, okay, this is a really long series. It's really good. It's funny. It's lighthearted. I could just put it on in the background while I'm doing other things. And so I mean, I've watched the series like not in order, but watched many
Yeah.
episodes. And I feel like the one that's standing out the most right now is when Ross is going and Rachel and I can't remember who else is there. Maybe it's I don't know if
Sure.
it's Chandler or if it's Monica, but they're going up, they're moving the couch and they're like,
Yeah,
pivot,
pivot. Yeah.
pivot. So anytime I move furniture now, I can't help but
Yep.
say that in my head or out loud. So and
Well,
it makes you laugh, which is the whole point, right? It's the whole point of that episode is just make you laugh. It's a funny scenario. So I would say Friends.
it's funny when you said pivotal, I was immediately, it triggered pivot in my mind. Like that was the first thing that came to mind. Is
Pivot. Yeah, see?
yeah,
Like imprints on you.
yeah, it's amazing. The fact that you've been in front of the camera is always impressive. You have a wonderful IMDb resume, by the way, as well. So I love seeing that. In our green room before we started the show, you talked about being a writer director now for your very first feature. Talk to us about that, because that's got to be an exciting experience. That's also the most difficult transition, if I recall, too.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty fascinating. So I have been really inspired. I've been going to a lot of film festivals, and I was really inspired by this film festival in Tampa Bay called the Sunscreen Film Festival. It was created and run by an awesome guy named Tony Armour. And the first year I went, I was just so blown away with how friendly and open to networking people were. I also learned a lot. They had a lot about, writing your first feature, your first short, workshops. They had just a lot, like even pitching stories to producers there. I mean, this was something I had never seen before. I've been to Tribeca and I've been to some of the other big ones, and I just felt like they weren't as approachable, if you will. And I remember the first year I went, I actually met a director and producer who was creating their first short themselves, filming in Tampa Bay, and they cast me as their lead just from that networking. So I was like hooked. I'm like, wow, this is really amazing that this exists and that's here. And I'm seeing all these people create these really wonderful documentaries and shorts and features, and it's all doable. Like, there's Tampa Bay has a really cool indie film circuit scene. We're also really known for commercial down here. Since I am, north and south, I spend time in New York, and then I also spend time down in Florida. And I just was really inspired to write something myself, and had actually co-wrote this script. If it gets picked up, maybe the name gets changed, but right now it's called Box Shit Crazy, and it's about a bachelorette party in Tampa Bay that goes awry during a scavenger hunt. It's crass, it's female cast is the lead, it's diverse, and it's just funny and fun. And that's something that I really wanted to write. And it's loosely based on my own bachelorette. So there's a lot of really, some things have been exaggerated a little bit, but my co-writer, Heather Cole, she and I actually met on set in New York at the time. We were filming a commercial, and she was talking about her wedding, and I was talking about my wedding at the time, and we just bonded over that. I said that I was buying some property in Tampa Bay. A year or two later, she said she was moving down. And so she's, not far from where we stay here. And we just kind of collaborated and just formed this beautiful friendship. And she gave me a lot of confidence. She has a lot more experience in the producer world and the writer world, and with her production company, with her husband and all of that. So she really motivated me, like, this is doable. Like, we can do this. And we just carved out time when I was pregnant and during the strike and all this other time, downtime essentially, because you don't book a ton when you're pregnant. You can, but like it slows down. The bigger you get, We just finally last month got it copyrighted. So I would say it took about a year, just kind of like casually getting together and like writing it and working on it and this and that. And I think we're on version 4. I know there's gonna be like version 20
Yeah.
at some point, but we're going to be going into the fundraising aspect. We have some producers that are interested in looking at it. So it's just kind of cool to be on the other side of things, build a name for myself in that department too. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Your story would be right up my alley. I love that. Just that kind of like 80s, 90s comedy style of comedy that it just isn't really around anymore.
Afraid to do anything or say anything. No, we say all the things. We push the borders, and I'm sorry, comedy has no bounds in my opinion. So like everyone is a victim and everyone's a target or subject to being a target. So it is what it is. I can't wait to share more as it progresses with you. So I'll definitely keep you updated on that. And then you can also, stay up to date. I like to post on my Instagram a lot. I can't handle too many social medias. Instagram at Miranda Roldan TV is the best place to see like what I've been up to, what's going on, and learn about podcast stuff and script stuff and film stuff. So just check me out over there.
Everyone usually has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
It's funny because I never really had a mentor going into this field. I really carved my own path and was like desperately searching for somebody to help guide me. And every single time, I just had to kind of make decisions on my own and learn as much as I could. But when I finally found the mentor, so I'm proud of myself for getting as far as I have. But when I finally found the mentor who I really look up to, and I mentioned her before, is Christine Horn. She's just really inspired me with her story of how she got into acting, and just to see her success has been so wonderful. And the fact that she's just so open and willing to pour out her knowledge, where a lot of, I feel like actors keep it within because they feel like it's, I don't know, sacred and no one else should know. She's done the opposite and has poured herself out. And the way that she shows up for her roles and the professionalism and the talent that she shows up to her roles is just really admirable. She'll also give you a swift kick in the butt too. She'll be like, "Oh, you're tired?" She has an expression, "Beat your face. Beat your face, Miranda. Like, put on your makeup, do your hair. I don't care if it's 11:30 at night. Like, get your audition in and do a good job." And that's like the voice I hear all the time when I am too tired and I'm like questioning whether or not like this audition is worth, my sleep and all of that. And she reminds me that it is, and I need to show up for myself too. So I would say she's the person who's really been inspiring me lately.
From a professional standpoint, you are a successful actor, you are a successful podcaster, now you're a very successful mother. And maybe in the future you might have more, and maybe in the future you'll have greater success that you'll be like, "Who's that Two Geeks Talking show? I don't know what that is." From a professional standpoint, you are successful on many different fronts, from an actor, from a podcaster, and from a mother. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find being quote unquote rich in moments. I have abundance and a beautiful life that I have worked to create, but also have manifested. And I really learned the power of manifesting. And I think that success is measured in a lot of different ways. And especially when it comes to the acting career, you can always try to chase the next best thing. And that's fun, and I love the journey of that, but it also can be very tiring and you do get burned out. And my whole philosophy behind that was just like, if you're starting to get tired and you need to take the break, then take the break. If you need to slow down, then you slow down. Just meet yourself where you're at and try to have that grace for yourself, which isn't always easy, especially for high functioning achievers like myself who just wants to keep going. But I have to say that, and I say this a lot, like the greatest role I was ever given was becoming a mommy. And I have that every day to really kind of ground me and make me feel good about my level of success in my life.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I recently read an article that's titled Fail Better, and it's by Adam Gottsfeld, Gottesfeld. The article was really interesting. You can take a look at it and read it. And basically, what the takeaway is for me is taking that chance, regardless if you think you're going to fail. Like, know that you're probably going to fail. Like, it's kind of like, no, you probably won't book this job, but I don't let that lead everything because then I wouldn't get up and do the audition at all. The expectation is like, yeah, I probably won't get it, but I'm not going to let it deter me. And you can view that as a failure. It is what it is. But the failing better is like, okay, what did you learn from that role? What did you learn while auditioning for that role or preparing for that role? Maybe you made a mistake on set and you were really embarrassed or whatever it was. Like, you still learned something that day. So it's going to make you a better actor if you continue going forward. So I feel like you could just fail better, but also fail fearlessly, because if you're just scared of failing all the time, you're really never going to get out of bed to do anything at all. So that article was really interesting, and it talks about cold emailing big, huge head honcho CEOs and just like people that you wouldn't ever expect to respond or like even give you the time of day. But you'll be surprised that if you come with a sense of being genuine and you generally want to make a connection instead of just getting something from somebody, because that wasn't the point. The point was just trying to establish a connection and get them to, an unreachable person. Like, if I was to be like, I want to email JLo, and like actually trying to email her and hoping she doesn't think I'm a stalker, but these are all the things in my head that I could think of. But like, what if I do get to her? But like, I would have never got to her unless I tried. And maybe I just want to tell her that she's like really inspired me, or whatever it is. Or I really loved her halftime show with Shakira and whatever it is at Super Bowl. So for me, it's about failing better and learning from it, and then also not being scared to take a chance out there, because that one chance may be your next opportunity for your role, which may just be your huge breakout role that changes your career forever.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as an actor or a podcaster. And the fact that you have the younger generation with you currently, maybe you're going to inspire them on a creative path in some way, shape, or form. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
My suggestion for influencing the generation now is to continue to show up for yourself. And does that mean showing up to finish the book that you're reading, showing up to finish the book that you're writing, showing up to finish the painting, to show your painting off to somebody else? Because that can be terrifying, right? Showing your work and exposing it is always very daunting, but to do it anyways. And you never know what artist or what piece of music you hear that could help heal someone also. So it's really almost selfish if you think about it to not share your gifts with the world because the next person after them may need to hear exactly the experience you went through, or they may need to see the piece that you created for them to help tell their story. My piece of advice is to really just continue to show up for yourself and stand up for yourself so that generations can continue to be inspired to share their voice. So this is a quote by Marianne Williamson from her book, Return to Love, that has really inspired me. And it says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talent, fabulous? But who are you not to be? And it goes into more. But who are you not to be? All of these amazing things. Don't play small. That's not how we inspire people. That's not how we stay true to ourselves. But most of the time, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure when we really uncover everything. And I think that's pretty awesome.
I can't top that. So,
Right? It like hits you hard.
yeah, that's
Ooh.
solid.
Mhm.
Now, normally what I would do is I would just throw your introduction as the very beginning and leave it at that and be
Mhm.
that lead in. But it looks like I found my new intro for at least your
Hey,
episode. So there you
there
go.
you go. Like it.
If your life was a TV show or a movie, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
Ooh, this is a fun one. Okay. Well, first of all, it would most likely be like a sitcom because I feel like my life is a sitcom most of the time. It would probably be something like Livin' La Vida Loca with Miranda. And the soundtrack, I mean, Girlfriend's gonna have like a cheesy 80s ballad. Like I could just see myself like probably a cheesy 80s ballad would be the soundtrack, but like it would be immersed in lots of different music as I'm going out and doing my life because half the time I'm like, I feel like I'm watching myself in a sitcom. Like, really? This really is happening right now? It's crazy. And everyone says that the banter between my husband and I is very sitcom like. I mean, we are that couple that just kind of like we're not talking about this issue now. We're talking about it right now. We're not gonna hide it behind doors and like, I don't know, it's just very comedic. And that's why I adore him because I can just be my most authentic self with him and he's his most authentic self. So it's a lot of fun. And I feel like the sitcom would probably revolve around that and us trying to be parents that it's just awkward and you're just doing your best out there.
We're having a fight in aisle 6 of the produce lane time cleanup in
Yeah,
aisle 6. There we go.
exactly. And then like kicking a rotisserie chicken like down the hall. I don't know.
Uh,
While spilling applesauce all over you. Like this is like real life. I don't know.
well, at least you could get a job with the Buccaneers then as the punt returner or whatever kickoff
That would
returns.
be awesome. That would be awesome.
Well, Miranda, I do hate to say, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Before I let you go, where can we find you? How can we support you? Of course, where is Miranda online and anything else you'd like to promote?
Okay, great. So you can find me on my Instagram at Miranda Roldan TV. That's where I have a lot of updates on a lot of different things. And you can also shoot me a little message and I'll say hello. You can also find the podcast, the Balancing Actor podcast, on everywhere that you listen to podcasts, so especially Spotify and Apple. And if you like what you hear, we'd love to hear from you. subscribe, all that good stuff. Maybe we'll get a little star action up in there. It just helps us get the podcast out, as Kurt knows, to a lot of other readers and listeners. And we want to see that happen.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talk. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,000 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO. Website's going through a complete rebuild because it's been forever. So go to our YouTube channel. That's always updated, youtube.com/TGTmedia. The podcast you can find at twogeekstalking.podbean.com or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.